gentlemen, I came tonight because I wanted to make sure that there was no misunderstanding about the fact that I do represent you. I have for some time now, due to an ordinance that you all passed over a year ago. When you passed that ordinance, it was also a directive given to me to keep you informed as far as the Clico case was concerned. I have consistently done that. I did that consistently until the new administration came in, however. I believe at this point, it's clear, that the law is certainly clear, that a contract created by ordinance can only be repealed by ordinance. We all live in this city, and as far as this case is concerned, I don't ever want there to be any confusion as to who the parties are that we're fighting. And when we have inter-fighting, it stops the process of taking care of the citizens of Alexandria, which is what I'm bound by law to do. When this case started, there were 4 lawyers in the case. 2 gentlemen from Baton Rouge, Craig Davidson and John Sharp, Philip Hunter, who is from Alexandria, and myself. In addition to that, there were 2 contract individuals, a company called EMS, represented by David Pugh, and who was that company, EMS, was later sued by the city of Alexandria. Once those contractors were sued as being former employees of Clico, the issue came at some given time about whether or not their interest was adverse to the city of Alexandria. Well, they were contractors for the city of Alexandria. They contracted on to do some work for the city of Alexandria. What that work is, I'm not completely clear on, because in every city council meeting that I have watched since they signed on, I've yet to see a report given to you. Now maybe those contractors are reporting to you when I'm not around, but I have yet to see a report given to you. I did receive a letter from Mr. Johnson, signed by his secretary, last week, or a week and a half ago, advising me that my participation in the Clico litigation was terminated. And I think those words were carefully chosen because, as you know, an appointed person, be it the city attorney or the city clerk, an appointed person has no authority to repeal an ordinance. And I think knowing that, he went on with the language about your participation is terminated, but not your contract. But those are nice words for a bad end result. And I never confuse niceness with economics. I always tell people that the master was nice to his slaves during slavery, but we weren't paid and we weren't free. And I'm not going to work free, as I have this case for the last 2 years. And then at the end of it, at the end of the letter that I received, it said, you can submit a bill to us for the work that you have done. And I assume that must be an hourly wage contract. I've gotten calls from several people in the last 2 weeks explaining to me that, don't worry, you'll get an hourly wage, and you'll get a couple $100 for the work that you've done. And not, however, from council members. I have to say that. The gentleman who gave me this contract ordinance, I have not gotten that from y'all, and that's because you've heard from me on a consistent basis. I'm tickled to some extent to hear the language. I'm somewhat tickled to hear the language, let the federal judge decide whether or not Ms. Brown has a right to be a lawyer in the case. You already decided that. And it's amazing to me that the question of whether Ms. Brown should be involved in the case has to be decided by the federal judge after you pass an ordinance on that. But all the 2 Baton Rouge lawyers who are still in the case, and Philip Hunter, who's no longer in the case, that didn't have to go through a federal judge. And so I can only look at what I see and wonder, in a city that looks like me, why is there no representation for people like me? For 20 years I've been practicing law in Alexandria. And I'm always amazed that people can explain to me what my place ought to be, what I should not be involved in, when you're not allowed to practice in this arena. Well, guess what? There was a day that they said that about you being city council members. That day is over. I didn't come here begging to be included in the Clico case. I already have a contract. And if the president of the city council can look at me and say, Ms. Brown, you have a contract, we gave that contract to you, and the letter that I'm sending back to Mr. Johnson explains that, and that letter in turn said, Mr. Johnson, you have no authority to terminate a contract. You're an appointed person. You cannot take the position of a vote like the council does. Because if that's the case, you don't need a council. And in addition to that, I'm always amazed at how the issue of legality comes up when people who look like me are involved. I'm the only woman in this case. That's no accident. For 20 years I've been fighting to be included in the room. And do you know what it's like, gentlemen? I know y'all know. Hobbs, I know you know. I know you know what it's like to be in a room with a bunch of folks that don't want you in the room.
Amen.
They can't pay you enough money for that. I know you know what it's like to be in a room with a bunch of folks who fall silent when you walk in because they're just things that they don't want you to know about. I know you know what I'm talking about. So, when I say that in the city that I grew up in, and I've been practicing law for 20 years, that with the new administration coming in, all of a sudden, I see people disappearing from City Hall instead of people being more inclusive. The reality is, I am, by ordinance, in this case. The federal judge already knows it. And any efforts by the administration to change that is idyllic of the fact that there's a misunderstanding that the city attorney represents the city council as well as the mayor. He has a fiduciary duty to the city council and the mayor. And I'd be willing to bet you a dime to a dollar that he never contacted the city council president, who he understands is in charge, and said, Mr. President, this is where I want to go. I need to know from you legally, is this your position?
Can I respond to that, Mr. President? All of that sounded very good, gentlemen. Very little of it was true factually. Very little of it was accurate legally. The easiest way to decide this, gentlemen, is just to have a motion to determine counsel and to let the judge who's presiding over this case decide the issue. I can tell you this, the mediation that's set for next Sunday, Ms. Brown will not be present. She will not receive any communications regarding the case. She will not play any role in the legal strategy as we get prepared for the mediation. And she will have no communication from my office as to the status of the case. She's exactly right. I don't have the authority to rescind an ordinance. I did not do that. What I did was remove her from the case. I didn't rescind your ordinance. I did not void her contract. All of you can understand how difficult it is for us to try to deal with a corporate giant like Clico, try to fight them, and then at the same time I have to deal with dissension inside my own team. I can't fight my lawyers and fight Clico at the same time. Ms. Brown did an artful job today of playing the race card. I can tell you, the last time I looked in the mirror, I looked African American. I don't believe that she can sincerely argue to y'all or to the people of Alexandria that racism played any role in any decision that's been made since Jacques Roy has been mayor. I can speak from my own experience. During the transition, there were 7 lawyers considered for this job. He chose me out of all of them. None of the other ones on the list were African American. So I really think this race baiting that you've seen go on today should be disregarded. The arguments that I'm making to you are legal ones. And what I invite Ms. Brown to do, I already have the motion ready, is to get her response ready and see if she can convince Judge Drell that she's right. I think that we're right, and it's an issue that needs to be decided right now. We don't need to go any further until we decide whether she's in the case. As far as I'm concerned, as far as the position of the administration, she is not, and she will not be back in this case as long as I'm city attorney.
Well, Chuck, number one, speaking directly to you, number one, you never really say anything to any one of these council members up here why you, okay, your words was you relieved the officer case. So you never just say anything like that. You asking us to send this to the federal judge, and you haven't even explained to us why you took the
I can tell you why. Everybody who was present in this room at the last city council meeting knows why she's out of the case. What you saw in here 2 weeks ago was orchestrated by Ms. Brown.
And I tell you,
Everybody in
it
here
wasn't
knows
orchestrated
that.
by Ms. Brown. You are
Well,
incorrect.
if she didn't orchestrate it, she certainly was a participant in it. She took actions that were adverse to her client. She knew it was going to happen, and she didn't advise me and the mayor about it, and that she's conflicted out of the case.
Let me, Mr. President, do this. I'm under the impression that Ms. Brown's still on the case. They're under the impression they're not. I think we move forward, we're not gonna solve that here. I said we move the meeting, and that's my position. Move the meeting.
Gentlemen, I invite y'all to let the judge decide.
I think.
Let the judge
Well, you
decide.
know, let me just
Put
say
it on.
this.
We put them on.
Let me
Why
just-
don't we just take it?
No one's conflicting with what the authority of the council is at all. There's no conflict with the authority of the council.
Let's get a legal ruling on the issue.
If we didn't get federal judge, we wouldn't have voted for the council.
Okay.
The councilman to act.
I move for adjournment. Adjournment. Anybody else?
Anybody else on the list?
If you're opening up, I sure have something to say.
There's nobody else.
Reverend Shaw, not just to disrespect you, but we did have a list.
Or what you say, anyone else, sir?
No, I was asking on the list. I was asking on the list.
No, you said,
You didn't say that.
no, I didn't say that. You
Always
said
have
that.
something to say.
Okay,
For what?
been a motion and a second that we adjourn.
College way.